So in this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and cover how to create or how to model windows in Rhino. I'm going to be using the sweep tool. We're essentially going to be creating a profile and then sweeping them around the windows. Before we do that, though, I want to create some layers. Okay, so the first one I'm going to create is just called Windows. Then I'm going to create another layer that's called Window, or let's call it Win Frame. So that's the window frame. And then we'll create one more that's called Win Glass. Okay. And what we're going to end up doing is creating the or putting the frame and the glass as subcategories into the window layer. Okay. But we'll go ahead and cover that once we get there. I just want to go ahead and create those layers right now. I'm going to leave the color as is. You can go ahead and change the color if you like. Actually, the window glass, that's not true. The window glass, let's go ahead and give it kind of a blue tint to it. We'll hit OK. All right. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to draw the profile of the window frame, okay, which is essentially what's connecting the glass portion to the wall. We're going to draw the profile, and then we're going to use a command that will allow us to essentially sweep it all along an edge. So in other words, kind of extrude it all along an edge so it goes all the way around. Okay? And then we'll go ahead and create our glass just using a simple extrusion, rectangular extrusion. So the first thing I'm going to do is that frame. I'm going to use the rectangle tool. Now remember that I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle using the dimensions. I'm going to create one that is 2 inches by 1 inch. Now remember that the first number always goes along the red axis, right? So that's why even if I'm working, we're going to build something really small. I'll go ahead and zoom out just to see where is my red axis. So the first number I'm going to go ahead and type in is 2 inches. And then the second number is going to be 1 inch. And then I'll hit, that's not right. Sorry, 2 inches, enter, 1 inch, enter. There we go. That was way more complicated. Um, and then we'll go ahead and create another rectangle. And this one is going to be 3/4 inches by 1/2 inch. Enter. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and move this. All right. First of all, before anything, before we even move this, you notice that now I'm having trouble with my zooming in, zooming out, and then when I orbit, I lose my rectangle very easily. Okay. So let's talk really quickly about the camera settings. The more we model in Rhino, the bigger, the wider the camera gets because it now has to be able to cover everything from this side all the way to this side. And if we add a third floor, it'd have to cover all of this, right? And so when we orbit, it's really trying to orbit around the entire model. So when I'm zooming in to something that's tiny, then it's still trying to orbit around the entire model. It makes it very difficult for me to orbit around the thing I've selected. And so what we can do is select the object. We could reorient the camera by selecting the thing or selecting the object that we want the camera to focus on. And then we use this icon right here, zoom selected. I'll go ahead and left click. And now you'll see that the camera is only focused on this. And when I orbit, I'm only orbiting around this. So this is great because now it allows me to select it. I could zoom in and I'm really just focusing this. So I'll go ahead and use the move tool, not move, and grab it from the middle because I want the middle to line up with that middle. Now we use the zoom selected so we can focus on this. Now what becomes a problem is that if we ever want to come back over here and start working over here, well, look at what happens to my camera settings because my camera settings are still focused in on that little guy right there. So although there is a lot of benefit to refocusing the camera to something small, It just means that next time, whenever you move away from that, you're going to have to go back and say, let's focus in on this. And then we'll hit this button again, and it reorganizes the camera settings. Okay. So that's the zoom selected command. It comes in really, really handy, and you'll see me using it quite a bit. All right, let's go back to our window frame though. And actually, I want to focus just kind of all in this area there. So I'll select those, hit the zoom selected, because this is where I'm going to be doing a lot of the work. Okay, so over here, I have my rectangle frame. I'm going to go ahead and actually get a little funky with it. And I'm going to draw an arc that goes from there. And let's go, I don't know, to the midpoint, to that midpoint. Okay. And then what I need to do is trim all of the lines and then join the profile. In order for this sweep command, this kind of extrusion around the rectangle to work, we need to create a profile that is one continuous set of lines. Okay, so we'll go ahead and select all this. We'll hit the trim, we'll type in trim command. We've used the trim command before. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and start deleting all these lines. It's asking which curve because I have overlap. So I'll select this one and then I'll select that again. Remember, we had overlapping curves because we had the line work from this rectangle and then we had the line work from this rectangle. And then once I'm done, I'll just hit the escape key a couple times to get out. And now I have the profile, but these are not connected. So I'll just do a cross window and select all of them. Again, the cross window is click on the left button and drag, let go. And then I'll use the join command because I want to join all those lines together. When I go back and I click on the line, all of the lines should be selected. Okay, that's the tell. That's how you can tell that the join worked. So now I have my profile that I want to use. Now I have to create the line work to tell Rhino where do you want to kind of extrude this, right? So it's like the path. So I'm going to draw a rectangle because I want the window inside here. Now, if I just go ahead and click a rectangle right now and I start to create a rectangle, by default, the rectangle always wants to go along the C plane. So you see, I can't go vertically. It just wants to go along the grid, like parallel to the grid. So let's escape. I'll click the rectangle again. What I can do is tap this button here that says vertical. Again, for my Mac users, it's going to be over here on the left side. So I'll click vertical. And now what I'll do is I'm going to go to the midpoint of my sill wall here. So I'll click and then I'll click to the other side and then I go up. Right? So you first click is to start, the second click is the width, and then the third click is the actual verticality, the height. And then I'm just going to come on straight up and then click. And there we have the curve. Next, what I'll do is I'll select my profile. Now I'm going to be using this profile quite a bit because I have a lot of windows. So I'm going to select the profile and copy it. Click copy. And again, select it at the midpoint here because that's the back side of the frame. And then I'm going to go ahead and place it anywhere along the edge here. I don't want to put it right on the corner because that's going to complicate things. I'm going to place it somewhere in the middle there. And then I'll hit the escape key to get out of that. So now I have the path for my sweep, and then I have the profile. So now we're ready to go ahead and use the sweep command. So I'm going to type in sweep, and there's sweep 1 and there's sweep 2. Right now we're just going to do sweep 1. Later on in future lectures, we're going to go ahead and cover the sweep 2 command. But right now, sweep 1 is just one profile following one rail, one set of lines. So I'll hit sweep 1, enter. And it's asking me to select the rail. The rail is this line. The rail is essentially where do you want the profile, right? It's like think of it as a train going along these rails, right? And so we have the profile along the rail going all the way around. So when we say select rail, we're going to click that. And it's asking select sweep shapes. I'm going to select this. And then I'll go ahead and hit enter. Now it's going to ask me to adjust the seam points, which is essentially like the direction that you want it to run. But in this case, I almost will always just leave it by the default arrow like direction. If I complete the sweep and then I realize like, oh wait, that's not right, that doesn't look right, then I'll go ahead and undo and then sweep again, and then I'll go ahead and flip the directions. So I'm just going to leave it, hit enter, okay, and then I'll hit OK. We're not going to change any of these settings. And now we have a window frame. Okay. Now it's really important that we select, whenever we complete a sweep, that we select it. And when we select it, we come on up here to the command line and we make sure that it says closed polysurface, right? We've talked about polysurfaces, surfaces, extrusions. There are, within polysurfaces, we always want a closed polysurface. That means that it has a top and a bottom. Now, in this sweep, there is technically no top and a bottom, but there is kind of a start and finish at the profile. So where we start and then where we finish, we want it to be one solid closed polysurface. Sometimes when we do the sweep command, and we'll actually see this in the next lecture when we cover doors. When we do the sweep command, it'll actually leave it as an open polysurface. Okay. And so in that case, we just want to make sure that that it is in fact a closed polysurfaces. If it's not, then we have issues with Boolean union. We actually have issues when we do the make 2D command, when we use the make 2D command, trying to create drawings. So it's just kind of headaches down the line. So since we're here, click on it, make sure it says closed polysurface. So that looks good. Now the next step is going to be to model the window frame. So I'll go ahead and use the rectangle tool. I'm going to select vertical, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle from one end, right? So the glass is going to sit here from one end all the way to the other end, and then I'm going to go straight up, just like that, okay? Now it doesn't look like we've done anything because all we did was draw lines, or we drew the rectangle lines. But if I click on the edge here, I'll be able to select, you can see I was able to select that set of lines then. If I click far away, it's going to ask me to select, there's the poly surface that we created, and then there's that curve. So the rectangle doesn't look like it's there, but it is. We're going to go ahead and select the rectangle line work, and then use extrude curve. And we're going to extrude outward. Okay. It's going to make the next step easier if we extrude outward instead of inward. So we're going to extrude outward, and we're going to extrude 1/2 inch. Now, windows themselves, the actual glass, vary in thickness if we're talking about single pane, but we're now all using dual pane windows, which means it's thicker. It's two pieces of glass with an air gap in the middle. Um, and all in all, it's probably about 1/2 inch. So we're going to use 1/2 inch, enter. Okay. And there is my piece of glass. There we go, right there. Now, what I need to do is move this piece of glass into my frame. I'm going to do that. And so what I want is to grab the midpoint of this glass and place it on the midpoint of my frame. As you can see, it's a little tricky, right? Like you really have to orient the camera and get it right. So what I'm going to do right now is actually change my view settings. Right now we're in shaded view. Watch what happens when we go into ghosted. Now I could kind of actually see everything, and makes it a lot easier for me to use the move command. Just grab the object from the midpoint and move it over here to that midpoint. And now I know that's the midpoint because I have object snaps turned on and I have the mid checked on. And then when I move my cursor, it says mid, and then it also says intersect because we're also intersecting that line. So I'll go ahead and click, and there we have our window. I'm going to go back to the shaded view. And now that the window is complete, I'm going to select the frame and then come over here to Wind Frame, right click, and change object layer. I'll select the glass, go to the wind glass, and change object layer. Okay. And so now I have my window. Notice that we didn't put anything in the window um, layer. What I'm going to do, if I if there's ever any objects that you model that you just know they work together, right? If in the future I want to move this window, for example, and I need to get rid of it, or I need to select it and be able to move it really quickly, I know that a window always has the glass and the frame attached. So if I'm moving a window, it's made of these two objects that are actually attached as one single object. And so the reality is that they really need to be together, even though we modeled them separately. So in that case, what I'm going to do is select both of these, holding down the Shift key, and then I'll left click. So I'll select both of these objects, and then I'm going to group them. Type in the command group and enter. Now, whenever I click on the glass and the frame are selected because they're grouped together. Now, that is not the same as joining them. Joining refers to actually kind of welding the objects together, kind of like a Boolean union. Grouping is just grouping them as two separate objects, but making it easy for you to select with one click. Okay, so by grouping it, that's what we do. I'm going to select the group and then put the group into the window layer. Okay, and I'll go ahead and place this. Sorry, let me go ahead and click and drag there. And I'm going to click and drag the glass. Select the glass and click and drag inside there. Oops, don't want to do that. Let me undo there. There we go. Okay, so now we have the window, which we could turn off. We still have our line work. But inside here, we have the window glass. Uh-oh, that did not work. Okay, so I did this backwards. I'm sorry. I should have done this part first. Okay, well, it's a learning lesson, right? That's why we do this. So we're going to do the same exact steps, but before we put this, before we put the individual objects in the layers and then drag them into the Windows layer, we're actually going to group it all together, put it in the Windows layer, and then we're going to go in and individually place them into the glass and frame layer. So let me show you. I'm sure it's confusing. We'll go ahead and do it again a second time because we have other windows to build. And then it'll make sense in the future. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and type in ungroup because I need to be able to select the individual pieces. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll select the frame. So now the ungroup went ahead and ungrouped the object. I'll select the frame. I'm going to go back and put it in select objects. Select the glass, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in change object layer, right, into the glass layer. And then I'll go ahead and select both of these and group them again. Okay, so now I should be able to turn off, there we go, turn off the glass if I needed to turn off the glass, but keep the frame, or vice versa. Why is that not? All right, third time's the charm. Let's ungroup it again. Select this, right click, change object layer. There we go. So now if we select this and group, okay, to one single group, we turn off the window frame, we could turn off the glass, or we could turn off the entire window itself. If you're confused, that's okay. I apologize for confusing you. Let's go ahead and do this again. And we're going to do this over here on this one. And hopefully this time we'll go ahead and kind of show you how to model it again. We'll move a lot faster, and then we'll deal with the layers then. So I already have my window profile. All I need to do at this point is draw a rectangle. We're going to go vertically. And I'm going to click here, click to the other side, and go straight up. Okay. Then I will select the object, copy, go from the back side of the middle of the back side, and again, place it somewhere over here in the middle of my line work. I'm then going to use the sweep command. So I'll type in sweep 1, enter. Select the rail first. Make sure to read what the command line is saying. Click, then click on the profile, enter, enter. We're not changing any settings. Okay. We click on the frame and make sure that it says closed polysurface. If it says open, all we have to do is use the cap command. It says unable to cap because it's already capped. And that will go ahead and close it. Okay. All right, so now that we have the frame, we'll go ahead and draw the actual glass. We're going to go vertically. We'll go from this side over here to this side. We're going to move up. And so now we have the line, and we'll go ahead and select the line and extrude curve. I'm going to come out. Make sure you move in the right direction. 1/2 inch. We'll go ahead and change this to the ghosted view setting so that I could select the extrusion I just created. And we're going to use the move command, and we're going to grab it from the midpoint. So I just move my cursor until it says mid. I'll grab it there. And then you see my camera settings already starting to like get really wonky. That's because they're set for over here, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just try to really get this in. I'm gonna go ahead and move right there, middle interior. Okay. And then let's go back to shaded view. All right. So what we're going to do is select the glass. All right, going back to the layers. We're going to go ahead and select the glass and move it to the window glass layer. We'll go ahead and select the frame. Oops, don't make it active. Right click and change object layer. We're going to go ahead and select both of these, hold down the shift key, and we're going to type in group. Okay. And now that should turn off the glass if we want to, turn off the frame if we want to, or turn off the entire window if we want to. Okay. So hopefully, I'm sorry if I confused you, but it's that simple. Just put the layers in the actual, put the layers as subcategories in the actual layers, and then put the objects within these subcategory layers. Okay. All right. So now you know how to model windows. Now, I definitely recommend that you keep doing these steps over and over and over again until you feel really confident, and don't feel like you're going to forget them because we're going to be moving on and we're going to have to create windows at some point in the future again. And you don't want to have to come back to this lecture, and have to rewatch it because you forgot how to do windows. So I'm sure there's other ways, and I'll show you how to move faster. And there are ways to move a lot faster. But I would definitely recommend that you spend an extra 20 minutes just repeating the commands, going over and over and over again, so that it gets drilled into the brain, right? But at some point, we have to be much more efficient. And so what we'll do is just move around and find similar size windows. And there are a lot of similar size windows in this project. And what we could do is just select the object and copy them. And I'll go ahead and grab it from this corner. And remember that whenever we use the move or copy command, we always have to find a location that matches where we want to place it. So I want to click right here, and come over here, there, pan over and click right there. Now over here, this is going to be a bit tricky because we need to also rotate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it. Okay. I'm also already having trouble like zooming in because again, my camera settings are still focused over here. So I'm going to select the entire building and then select zoom settings. right? It's going to make it a lot easier to move around this object at least. So now I'll select this, I'll click the rotate, and I'll just type in 90, enter. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and use the move command. And I want this midpoint to line up with the other midpoint, but now I can't see. Right? I can't really see. Well, I can because I have Smart Track on. But even if you're in the middle of a command, you could always change your setting. So we could go to ghosted, right, and find that midpoint right there. Okay. And that's it. I'll go ahead and do this one kind of afterwards. But what you're going to want to go ahead and do is complete the same window over and over again in all of the window spots for all of your first floor and your second floor windows. Okay. Good luck, everyone.